Hello, welcome to the Pastor and Professor. How come my music's not turning down? Oh, helps if I use the right slider. If I use the right slider, then the music comes down. Welcome to the Pastor and the Professor. It's been one of those days, Doug. How are you, my friend?
I hear you. I'm doing good. Yeah. Oh
no,
well,
no, you're not. The slider that I did turn down was your volume. We're off to a hell of a start.
Classic.
They're right next to each other.
Yeah, well, may have to move that.
I don't have my glasses on. See?
There it is.
How are you?
I'm good.
How was your week?
It's been a good week. A bounce back week for me as far as work is concerned, and that's always a good thing. And busy, and that's maybe better than not having anything to do. But
Doug always seems to want to tell me the temperature out there in California every time, unsolicited, because I don't really care anymore. And he's like, it's 88 degrees here today. I'm like, all right. Yeah, my week was interesting. It was it's kind of all over the place. Struggling with some things. It's funny because since I told my story, certain things have happened, but there's other things. It brought back a lot of the things I was dealing with, I guess, that I'd pushed aside and haven't been. I don't know. I guess I'm feeling like I'm not doing as good as I thought I was going to. See, now your lights are going off there.
I know. I was trying to turn it down a little bit. I'm a little on the bright side up here.
Right.
So
that's all right. I like you on the bright side. Anyway.
Oh.
So yeah, it's just been one of those weeks, busy with kids and school and our shows, and so yeah, it's been crazy. I got into an argument which we just got into a little bit. I had an argument this week about Pete Rose on my other show, and then you had to chime in tonight right before we went on air. He gets me all worked up.
Sorry.
So, yeah.
I was a big Red Machine fan growing up, so that's stuck with me.
So who would be on your Mount Rushmore of the Reds then?
Oh boy.
Has to be Johnny Bench. Johnny Bench has to be on the list.
Yeah, he's a go-to. I'm gonna back Pete Rose out, and I would go Robinson, Larkin.
Smart.
I know. I would follow your lead. I thought about George Foster just because he was such he had some really, really good, a couple 4 years in a row where
Yep.
he was just
Yep.
dominating.
Yep.
But if you're giving me the Pete did his thing in a short amount of time and career wise, he wasn't dominant, then
Yeah.
I couldn't put George in there, but you know.
Who was my I don't remember who my fourth was. Robinson, Bench, Morgan.
Morgan and Larkin. Yeah.
Larkin, yeah.
Yeah. That would be my top four.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I would say I would want to put a pitcher in there. You know, and Seaver probably may have been as close as they got to having, but he just wasn't there very long.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I was doing that show, I was shocked when I got to the pitching. Their pitching history is horrible. I mean, they have a whole bunch of no-hitters in perfect games. They have like the third most in history. And Johnny Vandermeer, the only guy who has 2 no-hitter, back-to-back no-hitters. But their starting pitching is, I think I went with Jose Rio, who was good but didn't have that long career. It's injury-prone. And Seaver wasn't there that long enough to warrant it. They have some solid relievers.
And he came in kind of at the end of his career, so, Yeah.
So, I was shocked. I'm looking forward to seeing when I get done doing all the teams where their pitching lines up, because they have such a huge tradition in baseball. And I didn't think the lineup was hard. I thought the lineup was pretty easy, but they have like a top 10 player in almost every position. So it was really, that part was easy, but the Mount Rushmore was much harder.
That was a good one.
I did not know you grew up a Reds fan.
Yeah, born in Dayton. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, but not a Bengals fan. So
that's good. That's a good. You're not a Browns fan though either. So.
Well, yeah. My other family was from up north Ohio, but it just didn't stick. My middle brother became a Cowboys fan, and I was at a very impressionable age, and I went with Doomsday Defense and Roger Staubach, Tony Dorsett.
I saw this really great meme this week that I was going to show you. I forgot what it was. Something about Joe Burrow having 2 playoff wins.
I'm sure you mentioned that a couple episodes ago.
It was because it was the 22nd. It was February 22nd, so it was 2-22, and that was the Cowboys' record of the last 24 years. 2-22.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
Again, I haven't been to the Super Bowl. Anyway.
Painfully aware.
It was nice having our wives on the show last week.
That was awesome. They did amazing. No requests so far. Yeah, no requests to take over our podcast so far. So
not yet. I feel it coming. Not yet. I'm feeling it coming. But if one of these weeks one of us can't make it, or
there you go,
something.
We've got a substitute.
That'd be fun too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was fun having them on the show. It was definitely hard tech-wise because the sound was all over the place. But
yeah.
So I apologize for that. Anyway. So I have a couple of quick things to talk about, just to kind of also a reminder. One of them is a reminder of our podcasts. So the audio versions of our shows are now on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts as well. I just didn't update that. So all our shows are on there as well, along with my new hit show, Heartbeat Radio. Heartbeat Radio episode 3 came out today. I released it today. I usually do it on Thursdays, but I was so excited to get this one out. We've had a lot of people listen to it and comment. So I'm excited about that one. This one is the first time that does not have Christian and gospel music as the backdrop of this. This is actually a band from Indiana called the Y Store, which is a rock band. But the episode is still about my journey with God and how God has used music in my life and how God specifically used the Y Store with me and my family and my relationship with my brother. So I think it's a really interesting show. So go check that out. I don't know if I'm going to release the next one tomorrow or not. I have like 3 or 4 in the can ready to go. Listen to me, in the can. Last time I said drop, I was going to drop the episode. Now I'm saying in the can.
Dude, you got all the good, media terminology. It's coming.
I just got to get over myself, I think. All right. So there's that. What else do we have? Oh, I just want to, I didn't pull up the dates and so forth, but I was going to remind people about Elevation Nights coming from Elevation Worship. They're hitting the road. I think April 26th through March or May 3rd or 4th, somewhere right there. But Cincinnati, Columbus, I think it was Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, Chicago, Boston, DC, a couple other cities. So if you're anywhere close to there, say within 5 hours driving of those cities, you can go to elevation.com and elevationworship.com and look at the schedule. Also elevationchurch.com. They also have a big social media presence too. I'm sure you can find the schedule. But I can't wait. I don't know which one I'm going to.
Well, gotta wait till they get out here.
I think the next trip is going to be out. I think next fall will be out
second tour. Yep.
Yeah. I have an idea.
Okay.
And it might be crazy, and this just might be my, crazy mind. But now that I have a radio show, I am going to see if I can get media passes. See, I think it's a good idea. It's worth a shot.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, yes. I can kind of cover it for the show, and I get backstage access and stuff like that, or whatever they give me. I don't know what you get with a media pass, but
dude,
it's worth a shot, especially because my first 2 episodes was pretty much all about Elevation.
There you go.
I did tag them on the post. I'm going to reach out specifically to Chris Brown and Brandon Lake coming up here this week and see if I can't start a conversation.
There you go.
I know it's wishful thinking, but I think big.
Hey,
I always have.
It never hurts to ask, right? All they can say is no.
Exactly. So tonight we are going to dive deeper into Doug's book. Let me get this off of here, then go over here, switch our screens, and then go like that. Oh, you're kidding me. My button for your book doesn't work. Hold on.
That's okay.
I even tested it. Let me see. Where's Doug book? There it is. There it is.
I was looking for a copy up on my shelf here. I was going to pull one down.
So I'm excited to get back into your book. We skipped a week last week because of getting the gals on. And we left off with you kind of introducing the book. We're leading up to the 5 foundational identities of the church. Which is probably I think you probably said the bulk of the book, but there's a lot of a significant segment before that. So I think we're kind of in the midst of that, and I'll let you kind of take it from there.
I'm going to take a swig real quick.
I am too.
I got a lot of
Cheers.
I got a lot of talking to do. Cheers.
Sometimes water is just so good.
It is. Got some high quality H2O right there. All right, so I wanted to continue to kind of set up talking about the 5 major identities by sharing a little bit more of how I got to this place, how I, ended up writing a book about this subject. And I want to give props to my wife, which I've probably said 3 or 4 times. She came up with the title for this book. I had a much more academic title in mind, because I was thinking theology and thinking, we need to set this, kind of subject straight. And so I'm going to name it this. And she basically said, along with a ton of other people, nobody's going to want to read that book. It sounds like a class you take at a Bible college. And, as an extracurricular class, it's not even a part of your, your basic, classes that you take. And so anyway, I reconsidered. I polled a ton of people, and all of them loved this title. I mean, I gave them 5 different title choices. This was unanimously running away with the title. But, how did I get to that place? How did I get to, writing a book, basically asking, are we doing church wrong? So, because I think the good thing is it asks a question and gives people a chance to answer it, after they've read it and go, hey, well, consider these things he's putting forth.
I think a lot of people are turned away from church right now because of that. I think, so I think a lot of people that are outside the church looking in have asked that question for a long time. And that's been their barrier.
Agreed.
Getting the church. And I think there's a lot of people in the church know it and sense it. And, so I think it's.
And we're in systems that have been around for decades and centuries. And, if it kind of works, people are kind of like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
And, but they don't realize how broke it is.
Yeah.
So, and that's a great segue into one of the things I was going to mention was like, who's the target audience for this book? And I had a couple different things, and I'm sorry for people watching the video here that I'm looking up. I've got a little script that I make sure I don't skip anything. But anybody who's going to church has never questioned anything about their church going experience, right? They've just kind of done the routine their entire life. That was me growing up. I mean, I was in the Bible Belt, so every Sunday morning I was in church. That was what was expected. Every one of my neighbors was in church because that's what was expected.
Yeah.
That's what you did on Sundays. Anybody who has, as you mentioned, church hurts or bad experiences in church, right? And they're now on the outside looking in and they're going, why do they keep doing these same things over and over again? And why do these, types of experiences and encounters and, bad situations continue to keep happening in church? Anybody who has never understood what the point of church is exactly, right? There are a ton of people that they're like, why do you go and hang out there on a Sunday? What do you get out of it? What are you supposed to be doing? We've come a long way culturally from the time when everybody knew what church was and everybody was a part of a church to a very diverse culture where, church attendance is way down, church participation is way down, identification of being a part of a church or being a Christian is way down, right? So there's a ton of people that they have no clue. They don't understand. Are you a civic organization? Are you, what type of religion and experience are you going for?
I think people are also confused by the different Christian denominations and everything, and all the different churches and the segments of the church and things like
that. Absolutely. Yeah. We've gone from being one central church when the church was birthed to having hundreds, if not thousands of different sects or denominations. And that's sects, SECTS
yes.
for people who are listening. And also anybody who has questions about why we do church as we do, or wants to know what the Bible says about church. So basically this book is for everybody. And I didn't even talk about church leadership, which it's also for them as well, because I've been there. I've been on staff at many churches and, been in those systems where it's, why do we continue to do this? One of my pastors used to say, there are a lot of ministries and churches that need funerals.
I like that.
Yeah. And sometimes we just keep doing stuff because it's what we've always done. And he was also the same pastor who used to say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, so I wrote this book to a large demographic. I think it pertains to a lot of people. I think a lot of people would get something out of it, right? And just understanding how God designed and defined his church and how it's been right there in front of us this whole time, but we really haven't discovered it yet. So that's the subtitle, Discovering God's Divine Design. So, and I wrote this book really to address two main things. I got a major revelation, which we're going to get into here in a second, out of the book of Proverbs. And after that, I realized we've been doing things backwards for generations. We really have, our approach to church has been like the opposite of what God has designed. And secondly, as I went deeper into the Bible and in researching this, I discovered God's divine design, that he actually spells out, this is the church. And he gives 5 and more, but 5 major identities that we're going to jump into in the next couple of weeks.
I think that was the most eye-opening thing to me reading it, that, there was all laid out. It's all right there for us. And yet we're in our own way because, again, we built these systems and these walls to things, and these pathways that are so rigid that we can't see over it to kind of get the 35,000 foot view of it and say, oh yeah, we forgot about this. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to reiterate, our cultural approach to church has generally been, and this is both people that go to church, Christians, or people that just look from the outside in at church. They view church as either a building, a place, right? That's the church, down the street from where I live. I pass it when I go to work. Or we look at it as an event or a service, right? I go to church at 11 o'clock on Sundays, right? I go to a church service. Or we look at it as an organization. These people that I know or myself, I belong to a church. I have membership at a church. It's either one of those three or a combination of those three. So that's culturally how we see church. But as I said, the Bible doesn't describe church in any of those three things. It's not a building, it's not an event or a service, and it's not an organization. And so as we delve deeper into this, we're going to see that, that's pretty plain, that, we've turned it into an institution. I mean, we talk about Constantine doing that and whatever it was, the 4th century, where he institutionalized the church, and, it went from being this organic thing that was spreading around the globe to, okay, now it's a centralized, we're going to, we have the church in Rome, and, everything flows out of that.
Do you think that was purposeful at that point for a reason, or do you think it's just that it was growing and it needed some kind of structure, and so that's why it developed?
Well, without getting in too deep in the political aspects of things, I think Constantine was trying to save his own dynasty, if you will, the Roman Empire. Yeah. And that was his last ditch effort, realizing that Christianity was going to eventually put him out of business, as far as being in control. So he decided to do the next best thing. If you can't beat him, join him. Right. So he took it and it became a place of power, another place of power for him to operate out of. And so I don't know that was necessarily a part of God's plan. I think God wanted it to keep growing organically the way that it was. And, and now we've got this, thing where we continue to, invent systems and like you said, spread out into all these different denominations. And it's just gotten really messy. Yep. And, this and what it's turned into currently is that we've created a business model of how we do church, and it's created a consumer approach to attending church, right? And I'm going to delve way more into this in my second book, which I'm currently working on, which is a follow-up to this book and dealing a lot more with the pragmatic issues of the broken systems within the church. But we have essentially a top-down triangle business model within the church that mirrors the world's business models. And our approach to church as attendees or people that go, congregants, whatever you wanted to call them, has become very consumer driven, right? We shop church, right? We lay out we move into a new area, we lay out the 5 churches we want to visit. We go, we check them out. We have our checklist in hand of what we want, things that we like, things that we don't like. That's how we choose church. So it's become very consumer driven, and we're so far away from God's design, his intent, and his purpose for the church. Again, that's laid out in the scriptures that we're going to delve into. And I refer to this as season / era that we are in with the current church as modern Americanized Christianity. And it's business model as far as the church is concerned. It's consumer driven as far as, and it's congregation is concerned.
Sorry,
I was talking to myself there.
Yeah. Echo there.
All right.
I got rid of it.
Echoing. Oh, you were awesome. You are. Boom. It was gone like that. But my question to everybody listening is, how do you define church? Like, if someone were to come up to you on the street and says, "What is church?" What would you tell them? Right? Would you say, "Well, it's a place where people gather"? Would you refer to it as a building? It's an organization that I belong to. Would you refer to it as an organization? Or it's what happens on Sunday at 11 o'clock, when we have a service, right? Would it be an event? And I think most people, if they weren't, primed or given any inside information as to what we were talking about, if you just asked them that question randomly, church attenders, you would mainly get those 3 answers.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do you see church, right? Do you see it through a biblical lens, which is what we're going to dive into? Or do you see it, according to your experience or your culture or how you grew up? How do you even approach church, right? What are you going for on Sunday mornings? What do you hope to get out of the experience. And that's kind of setting up what I'm going to talk a little bit about here. But, I want to go back to the beginning of my journey. I shared my testimony a little bit a few episodes ago about how I came to know Jesus, but I want to talk about my church experience a little bit because like I said, I grew up in the Bible Belt. So from the time I was, we moved into from Ohio to Virginia when I was 6 weeks old, 4 to 6 weeks old. And one of the very first things my parents did was find a church so they could get me baptized in it. Right. Or, I was, sprinkled as a little kid. Dedication probably is a better terminology for that. But so we ended up in a mid-sized Methodist church in my hometown. And, I had some great experiences there, but I didn't grow up a Christian. Culturally speaking, I thought I was, just because I was in church on Sundays. Right. But I was there every week. I got involved in the children's choir, from the time I was 5 years old until 8th grade. I was a part of the youth group there in church. But I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, but I was very churched. I could tell you a lot of stuff about church. I could tell you some of the main Bible stories that happened in the Bible, learned those growing up. But that's, that kind of set me up for kind of being one of those people that saw church as a building, a service, or an organization.
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand what God's fullness was as it relates to the church. Then about a couple years into my Christian walk, I'm reading my Bible and I come across this passage in Proverbs, which is one of my favorite books in the Bible, Proverbs 24:27. And it says something it was such a foreign concept to me, and it may have been because we don't live in an agricultural society anymore, or an era where this would actually been more prudent. But it just stumped me. So we get into Proverbs 24:7 and it says, make your work ready in the field and then afterwards build your house. And I was like, that just doesn't make any sense, right? Why would you go, plow and sow and do all that stuff and then build your house? I mean, you need a place to live. What are you going to do? Sleep out in the open? You've got a family, I'm not a prepper, but I love survival type stuff. And, and so I watch a lot of the shows and all that kind of stuff. And as any good survivalist or prepper will tell you, you always build shelter first. That is number one priority. If you're out and you need something to sleep under.
That is what Bear Grylls would do.
That's what Bear Grylls would do. Absolutely. We need to make some bracelets that say WWBGD. What would Bear Grylls do?
That's funny.
They'd probably sell pretty good. He may want a cut of that though. So
probably we'll get our own merch at some point.
Yeah, there we go. So anyway, I'm reading this and I'm like, have no clue what this is talking about. So as I did very often young in my Christian walk, I would read my Bible with a set of highlighters, a set of colored pens. I would underline stuff or highlight stuff that either was stuck out to me or was important to me or I had questions about. And right next to this verse in my very first Bible, student study Bible, I put 3 big question marks. What does this mean? Right. And every now and again I'd come back to it and I'd be like, all right, God, anything you want to show me here? Anything you want to tell me? So for a little bit, got nothing. And then a couple of years later, I'm in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, specifically verse 9. And it says, you are God's field, God's building. This is the Apostle Paul talking and to the church at Corinth. And when I heard that or read that, the light bulb went ding. And I went, where have I heard field and building before in the same context? And then I was reminded, the Holy Spirit was like, Proverbs 24:27. And I was like, oh, the scripture I've been stumped on for years. And so I went back and I was like, okay, let's, go back and forth and read and back and forth and read and try to make the connection here. And then, so if you further go out in extrapolating, that's a big word right there. That's a big word. I wanted to use that and I wanted to sound smart. So that was my plan, was to use that word at some point in tonight's podcast.
If I had the Rick roll ready, I would have Rick rolled.
I deserved it on that one. So anyway, I got deeper into 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and what Paul was talking about, and he was referring to us as plants, as individuals. We are plants, and this goes throughout the Bible. I mean, Paul addresses it again. When he's talking about us, the wheat and the tares, is in the Gospels. Jesus talks about, I am the vine, you are the branches. Psalm 1 talks about that, we are oaks planted by a stream, right? So all of this terminology in the Bible referring to us as plants or species that produce fruit, right? Jesus talked about that in John chapter 16, I believe, or 15, where he said, I've called you to bear much fruit and that your fruit would remain, right? So this is all throughout the Bible. As individuals, we are supposed to grow, we are supposed to produce fruit, and that analogy or type, if you will, carries throughout Scripture. And so I was like, okay, I'm a plant in the field. God wants me to grow. What does it take for me to grow, right? Because the goal, according to Romans 8:29, is that we're predestined to be conformed to the image of his son Jesus. He wants us to look like Jesus. So that's who we're growing in the likeness of. And when we produce fruit, it's because, we're becoming like him. So I got that out of 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And then the Lord led me to 1 Peter 2:5, where Peter describes us as living stones. Now, individually, we are living stones being fitted into a spiritual house. That's a type or another word for God's temple. And so I was like, aha, I'm catching the building part of this, right? As an individual, I'm a plant in the field, but I'm also a living stone who's being fitted together in God's temple. So I started to see the picture here. When I'm an individual, God's hoping that I will grow and produce fruit. And so I need to be exposed to things that cause growth, right? If you're a gardener at all, or you've played with being a gardener at all, right? You know there are certain things that plants need in order to grow and produce fruit. They need good soil, they need sunlight, they need water, and you have to tend to them, right? You have to pull weeds, right? So they don't get choked out, all that stuff. And then corporately, as this individual living stone, God wants to fit me together with other living stones in his house or in his temple. And so I was finally cluing into the big picture here, right? Mm-hmm. But the most important question was still ahead of me. Why the order? Why have to do it in the field first, make your work ready in the field, and then afterwards build your house? That was the most important question that I needed answered. And so I waited, and I finally got this passage of scripture out of 1 Kings 6:7. And I'm going to read it because I don't want to botch it. It says, the house or the temple, while it was being built, was built of stone prepared at the quarry. And there was neither hammer nor axe nor any iron tool heard in the house while it was being built. Now, of course, it's referring to Solomon's temple, which was God's temple that the Jews were building for him, that David wanted to build, but God said, your son's going to build it, not you. But he got the blueprints. He got the blueprints the same way Moses got the blueprints for the tabernacle. David got it for the temple, passed it along to his son. Solomon builds what was known as the very first temple, Solomon's temple. While they were building it, all of the finishing work of everything that was being put in to the temple, wood and stone, was being done away from the temple site, if you will, in the field. And then it was brought to the temple and fitted together, put together, right? So there was no tools, if they got a short or a long piece of wood, they didn't cut it right there to fix it. They had to take it back out to the field, get it cut, bring it back to the temple and put it together. Now, here, I'm going to put all of this together, everything that the Lord revealed to me in this, in relationship to this Proverbs 24:27 revelation, and why this order is important. We are the plants in the field, And God wants to work on us as individuals in the field away from his house, right? So in layman's terms and in modern terms, during the week, God wants to work on us and grow us and mature us and cause fruit to be produced in our life, so that when we come together in the house on Sundays, together with the other living stones, he can fit us together. But this hasn't been our approach in modern Americanized Christianity. We've had the exact opposite approach to it. We come to church wanting either someone to work on our plants and help us produce fruit, or someone to do the tool work, to the finishing work on us as a living stone. But that's not God's design. He wants to have time with us during the week. That's not just a 5-minute daily devotional. That's not just, here's God, I'm going to give you another hour on Wednesday, at a church service. He actually wants to grow us so that when we come to church, he can fit us together. What does that look like? Being fitted together with other living stones. It's using your gifts. It's giving instead of getting, right? This consumer mentality that I talked about, we come to church looking for an experience that gives us something, right? In my book, I talk about, we want the pastor to break out his toolbox and get to work. We want him to fix us, preach a sermon that speaks directly to what I'm going through. And really, our approach to church has been survival. We go to church on Sundays to feel good and to get filled up so that we can survive Monday through Saturday. And God's design is the exact opposite of that. He wants us to thrive Monday through Saturday, to grow, to spend quality time with him, to hear from him, so that when we go to church on Sunday, we don't need to receive, we don't need to get, we actually have something to give. And there's an intentionality. Now, again, with the broken system that we have, we look to 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people on a Sunday morning to do the ministry to us. The pastor, the worship leader, Sunday school teacher, or a ministry leader that leads a Bible study on Sundays, instead of looking for opportunities for us actually to use our gifts and to give to somebody. Like, when was the last time, and I'm saying this generally speaking to the audience out there, you went to church looking for an opportunity to minister to somebody else, to speak a word of encouragement to somebody else, to get an opportunity to pray for somebody else, and you're not on the prayer team, right? You're just the average Joe or Sally showing up on a Sunday, but you're so filled up with God from your time spent with God during the week that you actually have something to give instead of needing to get. That's the backwardness that we've been approaching church in, for generations. And that's what I think God wants to fix.
Yeah, I think it's listen to you tell this, and after I've read it, and I read it, months ago when it came out, and that was shortly after my heart attack. But you telling that story now and that process now, it's so clear to me that God's doing that same thing with me right now. I'm in the field growing and preparing and doing what I need to do so I can then share my gifts and then, fit into a community or whatever is next for me. That, I'm not ready. Like you said, when, the wood, if something came to the temple and it didn't fit, they'd have to go back and fix it. And I feel like I've said this for months now, that I felt God is preparing me. I can feel him working in me. And I kind of now see that as that being in the field and, being built and nurtured and learning what I need to learn and growing until I'm ready to be able to fit into what he has in plan for me. So you laying it out like this, I connected it when I first read it from the church history standpoint and knowing what we need to do and all that, but not the personal connection that just made complete sense to me right now. And again, that I also felt, I just didn't have a way to say it until you said it.
Oh, dude, I love that, because that's kind of, the application is not just in relationship to church. It's in relationship to the things in life that God is preparing us for, right? And sometimes we just want this kind of, fast food, throw it in a microwave and let it be ready. But God is so much about process, just as much as he is about the finished work or the destination or, journey, destination, process, finished work. he doesn't waste anything. And as a matter of fact, sometimes the process is necessary, like you said, to be ready for whatever it is that God has for us in the future.
Yeah. And I think, again, my head's spinning now because, again, I read it in terms of the church. I didn't read it in terms of me.
Right.
And so that is, now I'm like, I'm all excited. But I also now see, I know we're not going to get there tonight, but I know the first of your foundational identities is the family. And that now makes even more sense for me.
Yes.
So I can't wait till we get there. Cause that now it's like all the dots are connected.
Yeah. And so
tapping my feet. I can't, everything's shaking.
Happy dance.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it was this process of getting to this place. It just was this major eye opener that I think that, made me think, wow, we've really got it backwards. We, culturally, we've created a system that creates, in some respects, a dependence on the system. Because we have professionals that are doing the ministry, and some of them went to school for it, and and they do it every week. So we're going to rely on their expertise and their gifts and talents, and and almost is like, in a sense, either a lot of people talk about it being spoon fed the scriptures, right? Where we haven't grown off of baby formula. And actually Paul addresses that. He says you're still drinking milk. You should be eating solid food by now.
I think the structure of church too is like, it's not made for others to serve or to feed people. It's for the leadership to feed in the worship team and things like that. There aren't the opportunities. I know you'll talk about that later in the book, that there aren't those opportunities for the lay people to share their gifts and to serve and to minister to people. And I think, we had talked about this a while ago about some of the work that I'm doing with this exchange group and really moving away from the experts having all the knowledge, the one person, the keynote speaker disseminating all information, and really moving more towards crowdsourcing solutions and ideas and, ministering and everything else.
I love that.
I think that plays along to where you would like to see the church go. I think that plays right into that. So I'm seeing all these different layers of this, not just the church, but societal structure as well.
Yeah. And in my second book, I address that. It's what I refer to as circle culture, right? I think it was Andy Stanley from North Point in Georgia, or North Star. I can't remember. I think it's North Point. He said, life is done in circles, not rows. And we talk about, when we're going to dive into family, one of the things that stuck out to me was I heard a pastor say not too long ago, he said, when was the last time you went to a family reunion and you stared at the back of somebody's head for 45 minutes? That's not how life is lived. But we've made church into this event where, like you said, it's one guy up front. He's the expert. He's going to tell you how to live your life. And he's got probably some important stuff to share, but so does everybody else. Right. It really is about the body. It's really about being a family. I mean, these are the identities that we're going to delve into. So in this first book, it really is just, for me, if I were to encapsulate it, it's wanting to take the blinders off of people so they see church according to God's design, so that they can be the church according to God's design. So it's very important that we take this first step and admit, like everybody, if you're going to get free from something, if you're, you have to admit that there's a problem. And this first step for the church and those attending church and the leaders in the church is to say, we've been doing some things wrong. Not everything's wrong. Not everything's backwards. I love the church. I want to make that very clear. But I love God's church, the way he designed it. There are a lot of things I could say about my church experience, about places that I've been that, it wasn't done perfectly, and you're never going to find a perfect church. No. You can give up on that quest right now before you even make a list. It's full of imperfect people, so it will never be perfect. Jesus is the only one's perfect, but he still called us to get together with imperfect people and work on this thing called life, called ministry, called the gospel. And we have to learn to do it in love, with forgiveness, being able to even join hands with people we don't 100% agree with. There's I don't want to dig too deep in it, but there's, stuff that's orthodox that's very important that we have agreement in. And then there's a lot of stuff we just need to be able to agree to disagree, because
Right.
that's our either personal preference or our own conviction, which is, that's what it says in Romans 14:22. This faith that you have as your own conviction. So I'm responsible for what I believe, nobody else is, but I'm not responsible for what anybody else believes. That's between them and God.
I think too, that, there's still a lot of power involved in the church leadership. And I guess what's the word I'm trying to say? Not hesitation, but my concern would be in moving more towards the church that you're talking about, is that the leadership will be resistant because they're losing their status and power to it. So I'm again, I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but I see that there's the churches I've been to. There's clearly, not all of them, and there's some of them, the heads of these churches. Some of them, you can tell that they seem more entitled than others, and everything else. But I think it's
it's a definite concern.
We need to use the talents and gifts of the whole church, of the whole family. Yeah. Not just one person saying this is what you need to do, this is how we do things. That, my concern is, that's why, praying for leadership. And again, the idea that I threw out at you last episode, the episode before, is putting a conference together and getting some leaders in to start this conversation. Because there is going to be resistance, and I don't know if you've seen it so far, but there will be, because it is a shift in how we do things, and their power shifts. I want people to see, church leadership sees that their influence shifts, but it is much greater than it is now, because you're going from having all the burden on you,
right,
to using your whole community, your whole family, to solve issues and to administer to people. I mean, the power of one is not nearly as great as the power of 100 or 1,000 or 5,000.
Yep. Synergy, not that call it what you want.
Be, really powerful, but I know in some of the stuff I was doing with my work, just to make an analogy, is I was speaking and hosting conferences, and I'm the guy on the stage, the sage on the stage,
Mm-hmm.
And learning what I've learned kind of naturally, but also through exchange in some of the other groups I've been involved in, is now moving from that sage on the stage to the guide on the side, and seeing what happens in these small groups, the power that I see in like a breakout room that hasn't happened in face to face, but even virtually, the psychological safety that is created in those smaller groups. And breaking down some of the barriers where people are more free to share, they're more free to ask for help, whatever it may be, that their power, the leadership's power, actually increases, and their value increases, and their status amongst the people increases, because they're leading in that way versus so.
Well, and again, I think a ton of good-hearted people, and I know them personally, are in leadership at specific churches. They want to please God. They want to do things well. They want to see people's lives transformed. What they may not have taken into account up to this point is that they're in a system that, like you said, puts all the burden on them to make something happen, instead of a shared burden, right? That's circle culture. That's, there was a book that came out early on in my Christian walk in the early 90s called "Can the Pastor Do It Alone?" And, it was an attempt to try to, get more people, but it really was stuck in the same system. So, and like you said, I think people more at the top would be more resistant to change, because it's going to mean doing things drastically different, right? And I'm under no illusion that this is going to be a, a, a microphone drop and everybody's going to turn around and start walking in the other direction. This is a big ship that's going to take this is what do they call the big carriers? There's like a super carrier or something like that the Navy has, like it's, huge, right? You don't turn those on a dime. This is a long-term change, if I could say that. So my hopes are that it'll groundswell from the bottom up.
Yeah.
It probably won't come from the top down.
No, I agree, but also I agree with that, but I also think because of the age we're in and all the division we see and experience every day in our lives, I think this is the ripest time we've had in our lifetime for a shift like this to occur, because people are looking for answers. They're looking for help. They're looking for support. They're looking for community, and the leadership knows it and senses it. I think they're going to be more apt to look at other possibilities, open their minds and their hearts to other ideas, other voices, and try to swing that shift. Because I think this is the right moment for us, because everything else is going around in our world. We need this now more than ever.
I agree. And again, my hope is that, it picks up momentum. The snowball gathers some momentum and speed going down the hill, and by the time we get to the bottom, it's not necessarily an avalanche, but
I know.
Yeah. So it's needed now more than ever. I think our future is dictating that if we don't do something,
absolutely,
we're in a mess and a world of hurt.
Yeah,
we're in trouble.
That's why I think the time is right. Yeah, and I think that's just not hyperbole. I think we all sense it. I think religious or not religious, I think everybody senses we're in trouble here. The world is not right now. We're so separated. We're so divided. Everything is a label, and you're this and you're this, and there's no in between. There's no gray area. There isn't that room for compromise and for agreeing to disagree. That used to be a big saying, 10, 20 years ago. People don't do that anymore. It's their way or they're off. They just believe whatever their camp says without thinking or opening their own minds or looking at their own the data or looking at their own lives and making their own decisions for themselves versus saying, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I think the world senses it. I think everybody senses that, we're at a critical point in human history. And so.
Well, and like I said, I'm hopeful. I'll let God take this and run with it as far as he wants to do it. And I'll be happy to go wherever and share my heart and share, the vision for it and what the Lord has shown me. And, it's the passage of scripture that comes to mind is it says, come, let us reason together. Right. I think if we sat down and we looked at this and, had some really good, deep conversations about, how to do church and according to God's word, then we come out the other side thinking a lot alike, and there wouldn't be that much discrepancy. And I want to make one other clarification here as people are listening to this. My preferred model is house church. That doesn't necessarily come out in this book. But I don't have anything against large gatherings. And I need to say that, I still hang out at other churches and conferences, and I think God can do amazing things in those meetings and those services and those events. So I'm not in this. I'm not saying this type of church is wrong or this, thing is wrong. I do think there are things that need fixing, need correction. Some of it's a minor course correction. Some of it's a major course correction. But I don't want anybody to hear me saying, he doesn't like certain types of churches or whatever. That's not it at all. It's every church has something they can do better and more in line with God's design. So that's, people listening, I love you. I love your churches. Let's be the best church we can be. And so in order to do that, we have to know what God has said. This is what the church is supposed to be.
Again, I think, people need to understand the design of God's church. I know we'll get into that in the next few weeks and and so forth. But they, I think you've laid a really great foundation for the rest of the book for sure. And again, I love this idea of the conferences. I think about, and I hear you what you're saying, and I can attest to Doug his thoughts on churches and the size of the churches and so forth. I don't know which type of church I prefer. I tend to like the bigger churches because of the music and the energy of the body. But I do think the bigger churches tend to run into more problems because there's more people, there's more voices, more opinions, more power, all that stuff, more money, all that stuff. But I also think about what those big mega churches could do if we shift, and all of a sudden we're using the full gifts and power of that 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 congregation,
Right.
and immobilizing them to be warriors for God. I mean, if we can make that shift, and it's honored and valued, and I mean, what can be accomplished, is mind blowing to me.
And that would have to come not only from the people at the top recognizing, all that they have, stewardship wise, and those people and the gifts and the talents and the, resources that those people have in order to share with not only the church community, but their greater community. But it's going to take the attender and the congregant and the person who shows up to say, I'm going to commit beyond just volunteering once a month in a certain area of the church. I want to be a good steward of the things that God has entrusted to me, the gifts that he's given to me. And that means in your home, that means in your neighborhood, that means at school, that means at your workplace. It's not just a Sunday morning thing. It's really understanding, we're going to stand before him, and he's going to ask us two questions. Basically, he's going to say, what did you do with my son, Jesus? And the answer to the first question should be, and hopefully will be for, a ton of people, I made him Lord of my life. And I got saved. I invited him in. And then the second question is actually the same question. Okay, what did you do with my son, Jesus? Right. And that from that point, it's, how do we live our life in a way that we presented Jesus to those in our spheres of influence? Right. And it's not just for the evangelist to go evangelize. It's not just for the preacher to preach. It's not just for the teacher to teach. We all have some of those gifts that allow us to have influence on the people in our spheres of influence. And we need to be using it. But if we, again, as a culture, just are satisfied with showing up on a Sunday morning, hearing a good message, getting some good worship, and going home, we're missing the boat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes those other voices are more powerful for us individually in those moments that, the church leadership or somebody else can't, it's again, some of those voices that don't get heard by the larger congregation could be completely impactful on an individual level.
Absolutely.
I thought of something else in there. I think for me too, that's the difference for me right now is embodying that in all my life. Because before this, my faith was kind of private to me, and I think a lot of that for me was lack of confidence in the faith and not feeling I know enough, or where it was very private. But now I see it in every aspect of my life, and it's conscious in every aspect of my life, with friendships, with my kids, with my wife, with, I think completely differently now and question myself and catch myself, because I am walking with Christ, and it's different. It's still foreign to me. I'm still learning. I'm still growing more and more comfortable with them. I'm doing this show. I'm doing a show, The Pastor and Professor, and I'm doing a radio show. So I'm getting more comfortable with it, because I feel like God's asking me to do these things. I'm not doing it for my own thing. I have other things I'd rather be doing. Sorry, Lord. Other things I'm interested in that I'd like to do, but I feel like I don't understand yet why He's calling me to do these things, but I feel it in all aspects of my life. Like I wake up in the morning, and the first thing is usually one of the songs. I think we talked about this a while ago. I have these songs in my head. Oh, Karen was mentioning it. One of our first guest ever on the show. She was talking about waking up with these songs in her head. And I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I'm trying to think of what I woke up today with. It's because it's the latest single from Elevation, the Beatitudes.
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of the song? This is the Kingdom. This is the
Yeah,
Kingdom.
this is Kingdom.
With Pat
Yep.
Barrett. So, yeah. So I'm feeling it. What you just talked about. I feel it every. Again, I'm not. It's different for me. It's not necessarily second nature for me. So I'm working it. It's work, and it's a decision every day to how I respond or how I show up or how I don't show up. On the same token, it's also, especially in the situation I'm in health wise, is understanding I need to take time for myself and take care of myself. Cause I think the first part of our shows and my other show, it was a lot for me. And,
Yeah.
I had to slow down a bit. Not necessarily the shows, but all the work I did to put into one show.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, you're being worked on in the field. That's where you are right now. So I'm glad you got that revelation.
I have felt it since the heart attack. I literally feel it. I feel him working on me. And sometimes I feel bad or guilty because he's working on me even when I'm resting and laying there doing nothing, or not necessarily doing nothing, but because I'm always thinking. My brain's not idle right now, even though it's not racing or anything. It's just I'm thinking about God. I'm thinking about my relationships with God and what he's asking me to do and trying to understand certain things and so forth. But I feel it. I mean, I definitely feel constantly like he's not, like I've always said, he always would never let go. I mean, he always had a hold of me, but now it's like he has his hand on my shirt now. Like it's just constant. I mean,
I love it.
Knowing that I'm gonna, maybe he thinks I'm gonna run or bolt. I don't know, but I feel it all the time.
Well, I'll even throw one more in here, Jay, because you were saying he's working on you all the time. The Bible says he actually gives to his beloved even in their sleep. So even when you got your eyes shut, God's working on you.
No, I pray every night, or I kind of talk to God every night. I ask him to come to me during my sleep.
Yeah,
because absolutely. Other times in my life he has, and whether I guess I was dead when that happened, but I long for him to come to me in my sleep, and and a lot of times it's music. I wake up, I hear songs all the time.
Your spirit man is still aware of what's happening, and we pray every night before we go to bed that God would give us God dreams, and so sometimes we actually get them, and wake up with like, oh wow, this is what the Lord showed me. But I wanted to go back to that thing you said about people having impactful stories, within the church themselves.
Yeah.
Part of that is that they can relate because they've got a testimony that actually relates to somebody's struggle.
Right.
Right. So Monica was healed of cancer. Right. So every time somebody comes in and says, we're really struggling because so-and-so in our family or wherever our friends got cancer, we've got victory there that we fight out of. Right. So I'm saying, Monica, you have authority there. Get in there and pray for that person, or pray for this family member in relationship to that. But this is the point I was going to make. You have one of the most impactful stories that's affected me in this last year, right? Like I can't think of a sermon that I've heard that's in the last year that's had more effect on my life than your story. And so I want to encourage you in that. You getting out here and sharing this with, the world. It's important that everybody hears it because here's a guy like myself. I've been in the church for 35 years. Right. And your story, has done so much to encourage me, to build me up, to kind of set me back on my, course where I feel like God is wanting me to go in this season of my life. But you're not a preacher. You're not a pastor. You're not up there on a Sunday morning, and so imagine that. Imagine the thousands of people who have something to share, something to give, and they don't have an opportunity to give, or there's not a place for them. There's not it's tragic to think that we're, like you said, we're wasting this opportunity, and how many people could be affected worldwide if we just make this shift. So that's why this is very important.
Well, I almost made it through an episode without crying.
That's my bad. I knew it was going to happen, but I had to say it.
Well, thank you. Because one of the things I guess I've been struggling with. So there's another kind of component to my story that happened a couple weeks ago or a week or so ago. Doug knows about that I'll eventually share. Um, it had to do with me preparing for the Heartbeat Radio, and God made Himself clear to me and revealed some things to me and connected a whole bunch of dots in my life, and it was very exciting and dizzying at first, but since then I don't know if there's some fear that has crept in or whatever, but I've been really struggling with why He wants me to do this, because there's other people that have been through more severe things than I've been through. It's like I don't see how telling my story changes anything for anybody. That's what I've been strung with. It's like my story's not any greater than anybody else's, or it's not one of those things like, whoa, you hear that story that's going to go viral on things. It's like, you got to hear this. It's like, that's not how I see this. And that's how I feel it. So I've been struggling with the part that He wants me to continue to tell my story. And I'm like, why, what good does it do? So you saying that means a lot to me.
Yeah. And you needed to hear that. That's why God had me say it. Because I wasn't planning on bringing that out, but it just fit perfectly in what you brought up. And so, and I think long-term, Jay, there's definitely going to be it may not be YouTube viral or TikTok viral or anything like that, but it's going to have a ripple effect that I think is going to end up touching a lot of people and transforming a lot of people's lives. And if it's just the basic giving somebody hope because of your experience of knowing that there's something more out there, that in itself is huge. And so, that's the baseline we're working from. But God, I think, is going to use it to really touch and impact a ton of people.
I had seen a post on Facebook yesterday or the day before about a gentleman's dog. He has a video of just his dog running in a field. And the thing was, it was an older dog in the video, and the description of the video, whatever it was, I'm hoping this is the first thing I see when I go to heaven. And, and in my story, the first thing I recognize, and I wasn't necessarily close to my dogs. I'm not necessarily a dog lover. I love animals. I love my dogs and so forth. I'm not one of those people that like my whole world is my dog or anything like that. But, I was just like, well, funny you should mention that, because the first thing I saw was, the animals in my life. And,
yeah.
But, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to bring it back to levity here and say, I'm in trouble because I've had 40 cats. And so, people talk about cat ladies. I'm going to be in heaven with
I love animals.
In my mansion. With 40 cats.
Want kitties badly, and I'm allergic, but I've had a couple in the past that I wasn't that allergic to, or one I wasn't, and then I'm not as allergic as my dad, where it's just I'm going to be in the hospital all the time. Now the last cat I had that my wife got rid of, because the doctor told her to get rid of the cat, but I went to the hospital probably 3 times a year. Emergency room because I couldn't breathe, but I was willing to do that. It was worth the sacrifice. And now having kids and seeing both of them such animal lovers, and particularly kitties, seeing kitty videos, and they're like, oh. So I want one so badly for them. So
it'll happen. I'll just keep bringing my cats on and showing you and it'll move it along in the right direction.
Yeah, I have so many videos of animals. Juju's favorite animal is otters, and there's this one guy I follow that raises otters, these baby otters, and numerous two kitty. There's so many kitty ones and puppies. All animals. I saw the craziest thing ever known to man.
Okay, here we go.
I could show it to you. I can't show it to you. I gotta find out what it was. So I am irrationally, deathly afraid of snakes. Cartoon snakes, garter snakes. Kaa in the Jungle Book. I don't care if it's a cartoon. I don't like worms a whole lot or anything like that because they don't have no legs. But there is this creature. This creature I ran across on TikTok yesterday, and I completely lost it. I had no idea that there was something like this in the world. It was a furry. I wish Juju was here to tell me what it was. It's like a feathered snake or something. Here, I got. I'm not comfortable with a creature like this in the world, Doug. I'm sorry, and I'm gonna.
Well, it doesn't live anywhere near you, right?
I certainly hope not. I wish I could show you. I can show the camera.
It's another video you'll have to send to me at another time.
Man. It's in water, and it's this
right
with the tongue coming out, but it's like I shouldn't watch this late at night. It's so unbelievable. If somebody says it's an Aztec feathered serpent.
Okay, I've heard of it before. Yeah.
Creepiest thing. No,
don't go to South America. You'll be okay.
No, I'm good. I don't.
Yep.
I don't like Florida because there's too many bugs. Anyway.
Here, let me give you some good news. The Bible says in Luke 10:19 that we have authority and we will tread on serpents. So I think God will protect you, and you don't have to worry about that. But you and Monica both share a great dislike for the crawling serpent snake type creatures. She will not have it at all.
I'm deathly, irrationally. Yeah, you actually might remember this. When we were kids, do you remember the actor Mark Singer?
Yes.
He played
Beastmaster.
Beastmaster.
Yep.
He was in a movie called The S. Like a made-for-TV movie called The S. And he was a scientist, and he got bit by a snake, and he slowly turned into a snake. Oh, gosh. It was... I remember, I've had nightmares since that time. My brothers would always scare me or trick me, like, we're gonna put a snake in your bed. Like, it'd be I'd probably,
you would have lost it.
I don't know how we got here. We gotta move on from this. Well, yeah, that was a good. Are there other things you wanted to talk about the book tonight, Doug, or you want to?
No, I think we've set it up. That next week we can start diving into, and what I'll probably do is just do a quick overview of the 5 foundations, and then we'll jump right into family, because that really is, God's building block for community. Yeah. And we've kind of culturally, we've made it one thing when in reality it's a little bit different. And I even speak that from a Christian culture standpoint, because when we talk about family, we talk about family friendly, and we talk about things that, involve the nuclear family, and that's a part of it. But really what we're going to talk about is how God designs family as an entire community, right? You are brothers and sisters with a ton of people.
Yeah, and I don't know where this quote is, but you talk about, I don't know if it's prior to getting to the family or in that first part of it, where you talk about, addressing, taking care of yourself. And, again, what was that quote I used? Something about...
Oh, put your own mask on first.
Yeah, that type of thing. There was a quote in there, I'll pull it up, that I brought up, I think, the first episode, or maybe I did in one of the promo videos about basically, in order to fully walk in God's purpose, you need to
understand your identity.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm anxious. I'm so much looking forward. That was the foundation that I was really looking forward to the most. Now even more so. After tonight, because I think you did a really great job of laying this out. Again, I love how you bring things full circle. I thought you did a great job with that. I think anybody listening to this will agree with that. But I'm also now even more excited. It's one thing reading the book. It's one thing, reading the book, but now going through it with you, and especially in light of, things that I realized tonight about it. I'm looking forward to looking at it from that personal standpoint versus, the kind of the bigger picture things when I took my first read through it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. We did really good as far as time is concerned. I know. Amazing.
I know.
And that's hard for me. I'm a talker. So, but I didn't want to also read my entire book, and people are like, well, I don't need to buy it now. Doug's told me everything I need to know.
No.
But I did want to make this comment, is that I want to encourage people, make comments on our YouTube channel, on the various platforms, Facebook, wherever you're watching us or wherever you find us. Ask questions. You know, if there's something you want to know, whether you've read the book or not, in relationship to church or the things that we discuss, you see on our podcast, please comment so that we have some stuff that we can pick up and run with.
Yeah, and I think we've been, I should say, I've been a little more lax the last couple weeks again because I reached that point where I needed to kind of, you know, have some boundaries with my own time. So I'll have a better. I'm putting together a better system for me to be able to post more and break up the show and things like that. And again, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. Am I missing one? TikTok. We're on TikTok as well. And so, yeah, we're going to post things. I post stuff about the Heartbeat Radio. I post stuff about, you know, music that I'm listening to. Post We Run Across not just our own stuff, but other things we see and share. You were going to say, Doug?
I was just going to say, close us out in the, I don't want to see little you anymore. I want to see Big J.
Oh.
So, yeah, switch us to, there we go. Your favorite screen. My favorite screen too.
I kind of changed it a little bit. I don't know. What's that line right there? You guys seen that line? No, it's not. It's only on mine. Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
I changed it a little bit. I'm still tweaking. I'm still trying to figure it out.
It's all good.
No, yeah. So, you know, we're going to try to, Doug and I are going to talk a little bit about, you know, the type of content we want to post outside of the shows and try to keep the shows to relatively an hour. Again, we're kind of dragging it on now, but the content was all before.
That's right.
But yeah, talk about the type of things we want to share from others and post. I'm always going to be talking about music and so forth, prayers. And that's one thing I want to talk to you about at some point, because that's one thing I think I struggle with most. And sorry, we're digging in more time. But I'm struggling with praying. I mean, I talk to God all the time, and I know that's prayer, and, you know, it's a nonstop thing. But I mean, specific prayers and like praying with my family, because that's a foreign thing, and teaching my kids how to pray. And that's I feel uncomfortable because I don't know what to do. And then I also get nervous. Like we had a friend over a while ago, and I was going to say a prayer when we sat down to dinner, which is not something we normally do because we just didn't grow up doing that, except for some little cheesy little prayer. But I had this all.
I started out with cheesy prayers.
Yeah. I had this whole thing planned of what I wanted to say, and then like I was too scared.
Did you? I'm not going to go there, but we'll have this discussion afterwards.
the cheesy prayers.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we'll use it as an introduction. But so as soon as we're finished doing the book, we'll do a prayer podcast.
Okay, all right.
I got some really good stuff. You know, both scriptural and humorous.
That video is still up. It was still up right there. But it was a good point of, please, you know, interact with our content. Tell us what you'd like to see or something you'd like to hear more of. If you like the music stuff, you like the book stuff, you like the prayer stuff, whatever you like, something you'd like to see. One thing we know we want to do is we want to bring other people on to share their stories. So we've kind of identified some of our friends and people we've run into that will continue to do that. Ideally, I'd like to have a permanent segment of the show that will come up with some better title than Journey Walk with God or something. We'll figure out something better than that, I guess. But
we'll figure it out.
And donate probably, 30 minutes or so, 20, 30 minutes to being able to somebody share their story, which sometimes might be lead into other topics with that guest. Sometimes it won't. But I feel like that's one of the things I'm being called to do through the show is provide a way for other people to share their stories that want to share their stories, or maybe they don't understand they need to share their story yet, and how therapeutic and helpful Karen was on that first week, second week or whatever it was, and that was a really powerful thing to have her on, and I know that wasn't easy for her to do. So she went outside of her comfort zone to do that, but she appreciated doing it and saw the value in it. So, and then Monica and Annetta did a little bit last week, but yeah. So if you are interested in coming on our show and talking about any of these topics or something we haven't mentioned, let us know. Let us know.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Yes, sir. Another one in the books.
Another one in the books. This was 6. I thought it was 5. It was 6.
It was 6.
I am getting music ready because I blew that last week. I don't have. I'm gonna put our little "Feel So Alive" song on. I'm gonna turn it on a little bit. Actually, you know what? I I have another screen in here. I got that screen too.
Oh,
I
there
didn't
we
know
go.
which screen I was going to go to. That was our opening screen. I didn't know
Right.
what I was going to go to. So,
Still a good one.
still a good one. All right, brother. Love you. Talk to you in a few minutes, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yes.
See ya.